NASCAR, Bloomberg Markets, David Tulis, streaming strong at NoogaRadio.com. Live on YouTube and Facebook. Nooga Radio, News Talk 92.7. Chattanooga Radio.
You're listening to Two Millennials Talk on 92.7 FM here on Nooga Radio. Even though this sounds like a sports show, it's not the sports show.
Thank goodness.
So, well, we have a couple of things to get into. I think there's one story that I wanted to keep a surprise because I thought it was pretty interesting. But we were talking last week about diversity in comics.
Yeah.
And that got pretty interesting at the end, and it was like 6 minutes of the full.
Yeah, we totally got cut off because of just how time works and crap. So diversity in comics, if you're not familiar with it, is a YouTube channel where this guy, he talks about comic books and how he's a big comic fan and how comic books have really seemed to have gone downhill, not just in terms of quality, but in terms of message over the last over the last about 5 years, I would say. It's really sort of shifted. And writers who were previously quite good, from what I understand, have really just shifted directions and have suddenly become these like raving. What's a good word? What's a good word to describe them? I've lost my train.
I guess the term that's commonly thrown around is social justice warriors. And you just kind of just go, okay, well let's see if we can address the issues of like race and gender and sexuality just all in one go.
Which you can totally do in comics, just not that way.
You can. And so I was thinking about this because like the way that we do it currently is you just a character fill in the blank. It's almost like Mad Libs. It's like, oh, how do we make a new character? Well, we take one of our old characters, right? And then we just make him gay. Or we take one of our old characters and we just make him black. And like that's the solution to the problem.
And sometimes it doesn't turn out too badly. Like Nick Fury is not a bad character, as far as I know anyway. Like when I was still reading, Nick Fury was pretty good.
Yeah, Nick Fury is a character that was white until one day he was black. And
he became Samuel L. Jackson.
He became Samuel L. Jackson, and that was fine, and everybody was cool with it. But that, to your point, is a very good example of how it is that can go well. Because the character of Nick Fury was still the character of Nick Fury. Like, they didn't suddenly make the character of Nick Fury just a black guy. He was just Nick Fury, but a different color. like nothing changed. So everything that you liked about Nick Fury remained pretty much.
He was palette swapped to Nick Fury.
Pretty much.
Green Lantern's a good example too, because Green Lantern was Hal Jordan for forever. Now that's not Marvel, but Green Lantern was Hal Jordan for a long time, and they shifted him to what's his name again?
John Stewart.
Thank you, John Stewart. And he's the one I grew up with watching Justice League on TV.
Yeah,
I loved him. He was awesome.
And the thing is, and I think DC's been better about this than Marvel has in the whole. I mean, if you want to look at all the comics that we're all complaining about with these issues, most of them are Marvel.
Right, like Batman, as far as I know, is not going to become a queer woman anytime soon.
No, they shifted Batman. They shifted Bruce Wayne to Dick Grayson, who was Nightwing for the longest time, and he's another guy. And people were like, "No, you don't change Batman."
Batman is so sacred, though. Like Spider-Man, there's been weird stuff with Spider-Man before. Like you've had Scarlet Spider in the '90s and all that kind of thing.
And Peter Parker's quit like 6 times.
And that's kind of the nature of Peter Parker as a character. He's sort of he's not an unstable person, but he has emotional swings sometimes. He doesn't just swing from webs.
Yeah, there you go.
Has emotional swings too.
Feeling swing.
Yeah, he has mood swings as well. And, that's just part of his character, so you just sort of get it. You're like, okay, Peter Parker's doing that thing again. Batman is a stable person, for the most part. Batman's like a stable person. You won't see Batman just be like, I can't do it anymore. Like, he kept doing it until he physically could not, if you go by the Batman Beyond standard.
Yeah, and then you got someone else to do it.
Yeah, and then he's the kid who was, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Justice League Unlimited episode, whatever, he used Terry McGinnis, who was actually like a clone of him anyway.
So there, yeah. But and the thing with how DC did the Green Lantern thing, if we jump back to that,
please do,
is John Stewart became a Green Lantern in, I want to say, the 60s. So there was a whole lot of racial tension going on.
And that's like a hot button issue then.
Yeah. And they brought him in to sort of be this preachy character. But like Jon Stewart's personality isn't that he is black. It's that Hal Jordan was pretty racist in the 60s. And Jon Stewart's character was the character that was showing Hal Jordan, like, no, the color doesn't make the difference here. And that the whole point is that once you get a Green Lantern ring, it chooses you based on only one criteria, which is the ability to overcome fear. And so once Hal Jordan saw someone of a different race get that ring, he had to confront his own racism, which is great storytelling.
Yeah.
What's happening today is not great storytelling. It's the opposite of that, in fact. You're taking characters who could be interesting and who might otherwise be interesting and making them the lowest common denominator of themselves.
Everyone has trouble with that phrase, by the way. Common denominator is the worst phrase ever in the English language.
Didn't expect to have to fight that one today. But
today, talking about comics, and now we're talking about denominators. What is this, math class again? Yeah, but the thing that diversity in comics brings up a lot, and I don't want to bring up his... He got doxxed a while ago. I don't want to bring up the whole real name thing, so I'll just call him Diversity Comics from now on. But the thing Diversity in Comics brought up is just how Marvel, particularly, he calls it SJW Marvel, which I think is pretty funny, has gone so far downhill as a business that it's actually failing not just creatively, but it's actually failing as a business because comic sales themselves have gone down in an era where you have like the whole geek culture thing as a mainstream thing. In this climate, people aren't buying Marvel comics. What's going on here?
Which is crazy because they have the most popular movie. So you should be able to parlay that into some level of financial success. But I will tell you this. People don't like to be preached at.
Very true.
I think people want to engage in a dialogue with you. And there's a fine line there. I understand that it's not easy to see where the line is. Like, I'm not just saying like anybody could do it. But these are some of the best writers in the world. So they should be able to do it. But people don't like to be preached at. I think there's a level of sensitivity that you have to have when it comes to telling people like, hey, I want you to be accepting of other genders and I want you to be accepting of other races and all of these things. I want you to be accepting of this without A, making you seem like you're already not, and B, beating you over the head with it. Like there is a line there. And you can cross it frequently. And for me, it's like, okay, talk radio is where you get to beat people over the head with stuff. When you're reading comics, like you just want a cool story. Like you want to see your favorite superhero punch stuff.
Right.
And then you need a good reason for them to punch stuff. And so they have to be an interesting character. And nobody wants to be preached at instead of,
and
hey.
Voting the wrong way, generally speaking, is not not generally a good reason to punch somebody either.
Yeah. And I think DC does a really good job with it because like the Superman comics have the potential to be particularly preachy.
Because Superman's basically alien evangelist.
Yes.
He's a missionary sent from Krypton.
From Krypton. And you know, the stories do get a little preachy. Like there was one episode where Superman, after he lost his powers and
again.
and he's been slowly regaining them. So like he literally got reduced back to the point where he could only jump over a tall building, which I thought was pretty
funny.
was pretty cool. And he even though he's not invincible at that point in the story, you know, he takes on the police. Which is political given like the nature of the whole thing.
Is that recent?
Last year.
Oh, last year. Okay.
Last summer.
Okay.
But the way that they did it was not at all like police are evil. Like obviously the further Superman gets into the story, well then you find out someone is controlling the city's government, and that person is pretty nefarious. And like it sort of explains how it is that if a government is corrupt, perfectly good people could find themselves doing corrupt things also. Right. It got pretty interesting. You have to be able to tell an interesting story. You can't just beat me over the head with, well, no, I want you to accept transgender, so I'm going to give you a character who's transgender. Are they funny? Are they witty? Do they have complicated personality traits and flaws? No, they're just transgender. That's their personality.
No.
It's not at all fun.
No, it's not fun. And here's the thing that I think is so bonkers about the whole thing is that you have to remind people sometimes we do live in the year 2017, and things are totally different now than they were even 5 years ago. Things are drastically different. But the thing you have to keep reminding people is that most people don't really care that much if someone's gay, you know, and most people don't really care that much especially these days, if someone's like black or Asian, like most people don't care about that kind of thing.
It doesn't come up, and it shouldn't.
Right. It's not like
often.
A conversation be like, Keon, I noticed that you're black. Let's talk about that. Like, who freaking cares? Like, I mean, it's not like a who cares thing, but it's not like a regular topic of conversation. Our differing races,
Right.
It's just silly.
And that's the thing that I find to be odd. I think you have to listen to people of different races when they say, hey, you're doing something and you don't realize you're doing it, but like this hurts my feelings or this offends me.
Right.
Like,
that's a pretty big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like there's a whole thing with the Confederate statues, which I think we've just kind of bulldozed through and like rushed through our discussion on that.
There's next to no debate over that issue. Yeah.
But I think that there is a discussion to be had about how it makes people feel. And I would rather do that. But like in a normal interaction, if I have to constantly think about the fact that someone is Asian, like I have a problem. I really honestly do. I should notice it because I'm not blind.
Right.
But it shouldn't be the only thing I notice. And that's where we get to with these Marvel characters, that they're one-dimensional characters, and it's the only thing you can notice because it's the only thing that they are. And I guess I don't know, like my DC fanboyism is showing out, but there was a character that they had last year, and I don't know if his comic is still in continuation. But Midnighter is a character that DC made that he's a gay character.
Okay. And
that is not the thing that you focus on with Midnighter. He is absolutely crazy. Like he's the good guy, but he's a complete anti-hero. But his means of doing things are, as a person reading the comic, you are shocked by what it is that he's going to do next, and you want to keep reading. And it doesn't occur to you that Midnighter is a gay character until it comes up in the plot, right? Like until it's like, oh no, Midnighter goes home to his boyfriend, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah. But when Midnighter is going out punching people in the face, and he punches a lot of people, like a lot of people, you don't think about it. It doesn't come up. There's more to the character of Midnighter than just his sexual orientation, which is how you would do that.
As a superhero, I can't imagine your sexual orientation comes into play all that often.
Right. Like if you're doing your job properly.
My gay insight helps me destroy this crime syndicate. It doesn't really doesn't really translate over very well.
You can't use your gaydar like a spidey sense. It's not.
And the funny thing is, people forget this, but Marvel has tackled the whole like different people issue before through allegory. The X-Men,
their own. Their own,
and they didn't like freaking beat you over the head with it. The different people need to be accepted. It's like you sympathize with the characters. They're the X-Men. You think they're cool. Other people don't like them. You think they're wrong for not liking it, but you're given a reason to like the X-Men.
Right, and in fact,
you root for them.
And it's great that it's an allegory, right?
Yeah,
because you can be accepting of people and learn that lesson from the X-Men without any of the X-Men being from that group of people, right?
Yeah,
because the X-Men are just mutants.
I was gonna say they're normal people, but like inwardly, they're very like personality-wise. A lot of them are just normal people.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So you, the reader, get to know them, and then you're like, well, why does everyone hate them so much? And everyone's wrong for hating them so much.
Yeah,
and then you could understand how a character like Magneto would be so angry all the time, right? And then maybe, I don't know, if you live in the 60s and you're reading comics in the 60s and you think, well, this Malcolm X character is a pretty scary guy.
Yeah.
You could understand how a guy like that might exist in a world where people feel oppressed without any of those characters actually having to be black, which is amazing storytelling.
Yeah, it's so well done, and it's been done. When our parents were kids,
and
it's been done.
There's one of those things where storytelling, I don't know if you've noticed in stories that all stories that you like are like the same story.
Yeah.
If you
what they call the hero's journey or whatever.
Yeah. If you like The Lion King or you like Star Wars, like it doesn't matter. You like the same story.
Yeah.
But the reason why we are perfectly fine with these stories being told over and over and over again is because they work.
It's a formula that works. It's like Coca-Cola.
And the X-Men formula works. Why are we doing this differently and wrong, might I add?
Oh, that's a good allegory, by the way. Speaking of allegories, I just thought of that. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I have to. That's a good allegory. The old X-Men, comics as they were up until like 2007, are Coca-Cola. The new comics are New Coke. And we're all really mad about New Coke.
It doesn't taste as good.
It doesn't taste, or it just tastes different. It doesn't matter if it's different. I don't like it's different.
Well, I guess that's where the analogy ends there, because
Yeah,
I
the
would
analogy
argue
there.
that the comics now are not just different. I think they're bad.
Right. Well, they don't work. That's the thing. Is it's not marketable. It's not good for a broad audience. It's if we had started out with those comics, and those had been American comics for all time, it wouldn't be a big deal. But they weren't, and they aren't, and they shouldn't be.
And I'm a DC Comics fan, so you would think, oh yeah, Marvel, they're losing. This is what I want. But actually, no. When both companies are doing well, that's when we get the best comics.
Ultimate competition, maximum capitalism. Love it.
Yeah, you've got brick and mortar stores closing down.
Yeah, that sucks, dude.
Because you've got Marvel comics that people aren't buying, which means that there are DC comics not being sold there because they closed down.
And the crazy thing, because of Marvel's bad writing, real businesses are going out of business.
Yes,
that's crazy.
Because you want to make money off of this stuff, right? And it's so easy if you're Marvel right now to introduce people to the world of comics when, like, everyone's excited about the next Avengers movie or the Thor Ragnarok movie that's coming out in October. Like, everyone is excited about that movie.
Oh, they are?
Well, lots of people that I know, I think they're just like average people. They're very excited about that movie. And so, like, that's the chance to convert those people into comic book fans.
And what do they read when they go to see the comics?
They go to read the comics, and then you're just preaching at them.
Right. I can't wait to read Iron Man, Tony Stark, Iron Man. You pick up Iron Man, you're like, the heck is this? This is just some kid.
Which would be fine, but then the kid needs to be interesting.
Right. Like, good kid Iron Man. That'd be fun. Like, what if, and you don't have to change anything about Riri Williams' appearance or anything like that. Just make Riri Williams, who is Iron Man now, by the way. She's Iron Heart, I think is what she's calling herself. Just make her like an intelligent kid who's trying to figure out the Iron Man suit, and she's like, oh, that's how that works, all that kind of cool stuff. And it's a discovery process. You grow with her as a character. You grow to like her as a character. She overcomes adversity, which is not knowing how the frickin' suit works, that kind of thing. That's good. Having her be totally high and mighty and thinking she's better than everyone, and everyone just telling her that she's better than everyone, there's no adversity there.
Correct. It's a flaw too. Like all great characters need a flaw, a fundamental flaw that, by going through the story, they fix or learn to deal with, or some such thing. Because that's like your actual life. Like, that's what makes a character relatable. Is a character that exists with a life that's like your actual life. Yes. And
no matter what the scale, like Tony Stark's alcoholism, I'm not an alcoholic, but I relate to Tony Stark having problems,
Like, it's because, when you tell a story, what your character actually does and what they're motivated by is in large part a part of their flaw. And maybe they're trying to hide their flaw. Maybe they're trying to fix their flaw, but that always controls what they do. And so the story should come from there. Right. So if you think to yourself, well, if I put Riri Williams in a situation where, her best friend's been kidnapped, based on what the worst thing she's capable of is, what she's liable to do in a situation, and how you end up feeling good that she overcomes that. The problem is there is no worst of Riri Williams. They've written her so that there's nothing wrong with her, at all. And there is nobody on earth that's like that. Like, what are you doing?
It's like she's almost, and this has been brought up by Diversity in Comics, by the way, she's almost being written like a supervillain. Just because of how she is as a character.
Yeah.
And her total egotistical nature. She's almost like a supervillain.
Because that's how you write supervillains, though. Because here's the thing with supervillains, is they may have flaws. They don't think that they have any. And that the way to write the best bad guy, as I have read from a number of writers, is to write the bad guy that thinks he's right. Like, he thinks he's the good guy in the story.
Magneto,
Lex Luthor.
Any of them. Yeah, Lex Luthor is the ultimate example of that, I think.
He thinks that Superman is actually bad for humanity. He's not just some evil rich guy. Yeah. He's a rich guy that thinks, I'm trying to do what's best for humanity. And if humanity learns to rely on a Superman, that ultimately sets us back in the long run. And I will use my money to save them.
And it's almost a noble goal. That's what I love about Lex Luthor, is that his goals are almost noble.
Right.
It's just like, oh man, I get where Lex Luthor is coming from, but I want Superman to win. But I sympathize with Lex Luthor. I don't sympathize with Riri Williams or really anyone she's fighting. I don't care about Hydra. I don't really care about any of that stuff. It's just not interesting to me.
Yeah, that's pretty much that's pretty much like the big weakness of all these characters. And I think that, like, we were all excited for Miles Morales when he entered the Marvel universe, and he's been written like this too now. Like
he's really devolved, I think.
Yeah, his dimensionality has been reduced to him being a one-dimensional character too. Like he doesn't have a personality that's, I mean, you could even remotely call interesting, and it's insane.
And the root of the problem that's been pointed out anyway by Diversity in Comics, I can't speak to this personally, is that Marvel is hiring writers who don't know how to write well, or writers who have decided to write these very pandering stories who used to be decent writers. Bendis being a good example of that. John Michael Bendis could write good stuff, but now he's shifted totally and decided to just pander to the current SJW trend.
Right, which, some people do trend in that direction already.
Sure.
But it's like, resist that urge and tell a story.
Right.
If you want to put a message and a theme in a story, hey, go ahead. But tell the story first.
Story always comes first, not your agenda.
Not your agenda. You're listening to Two Millennials Talk here on 92.7 FM and Nooga Radio.
Chattanooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM's news now.
Walker Chemical took out an ad in today's newspaper to apologize to the community for what they called any confusion or anxiety that the incident at the Charleston plant may have caused. The plant manager, Mary Beth Hudson, wrote the letter saying, "We know it was a stressful situation for our employees and for our entire community." The letter ends with, "We care for our team members and our community. Wacker Charleston will be stronger and better because of what we went through last week. This is our pledge to you." 20-year-old Desmond Powell has been arrested after several burglaries and thefts occurred in East Ridge. The front door of the Haiku Hibachi restaurant was smashed inwards, and the police found Mr. Powell hiding under a semi-trailer nearby. He was taken into custody. East Ridge PD says he confessed to 4 different burglaries in the East Ridge area. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News Talk 92.7. Now.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM. Broadcasting live to over 1 million souls in Chattanooga, the Tennessee Valley, and beyond on frequency modulation 92.7. Sean Hannity. 25,000 watts on digital FM 95.3 HD4. CBS Radio News. NASCAR, Bloomberg Markets, David Tulis, streaming strong at Noogaradio.com. Live on YouTube and Facebook. Nooga Radio, News Talk 92.7. Chattanooga Radio.
Don't punish your gun by leaving it in a corner. Shoot it, sell it, or just toss it. Okay. Don't toss it. Make money with it. Shooter Supply and Indoor Range, the hottest gun shop in town, finds buyers for your extra firearms. Put cash in your pocket today. Are ARs cluttering your closet? Rugers rusting in your rec room? Shooter's Supply and Indoor Range in Hickson will take your firearm and put it on consignment. To you, that means no money out of your pocket with a small fee when the gun sells. Larry at Shooters has got an online store. He's licensed to ship anywhere. It's as if Shooter Supply were giving your billfold cover fire. Get the biggest number of bucks from the smallest Derringer to the longest Barrett. Maximum price, shortest time. What a great deal. Shooters-range.com. Shooters-range.com. That's shooters-range.com. Check with Larry.
When my brother and I opened the first Jets Pizza, we believed if we made the best pizza, customers would find us. So we made fresh dough each day, used fresh toppings, and premium mozzarella cheese. 300-plus stores later, we still do.
Try Jet's famous 8-corner pizza with premium mozzarella cheese and 1 topping, now just $11.99 for a limited time only. Jet's Pizza, the best pizza in town. 3600 Hickson Pike.
Life is short. Eat better pizza.
Let's get Jets.
Hi, this is Eric Pelton. Taxes, accounting, business advice. I've got a neat brochure, 12 ways to improve your business profits. Come on by for a free consultation and we'll give you a copy. E.J. Pelton Company, 332-3339.
I have the best steak selection in town. Name of the business is Don's Meat Shop, and I'm Donnie Raines. Just ask for Donnie. I make over 20 different types of sausages. Most of them are great for grilling. We have the best selection, best quality. We have the hard-to-find items. Don's Meat Shop.
Whether it's a car accident, storm damage, or fire, when the unthinkable happens, it doesn't matter if you've saved money in 15 minutes. In this moment, it doesn't matter if your neighbor has the same insurance you do. What matters is your independent insurance agent and the company behind him have you covered. Auto Owners Insurance, the no problem people. Goss Insurance in Hickson. Goss, 875-2500.
Hi, I'm David Crockett, and I'm here with David Tulis, and we're having a little discussion over who's the number one Nooga centrist. If you want to keep up with free market ideas, then read Nooganomics.com. David Tulis, the blogger with the biggest pen.
Hi, this is Chrissy. And this is Summer of Summer Cares. There are too many homeless veterans in Chattanooga. Please help us in our Shoebox for Veterans campaign. You can fill a shoebox with hand warmers, hand sanitizers, hand wipes, cough drops, razors, shaving cream, toothbrush, toothpaste, soap, shampoo, deodorant, snacks, socks, gloves, and even a small blanket.
And make sure you drop your shoeboxes or your shoebox items off at Nooga Radio Studio on Hickson Pike across from Bojangles below Goss Insurance or Alpine Crest Elementary School.
Please join us at the Community Kitchen in Chattanooga on November 10th from 11 to 12:30 and help us distribute these care packages to the homeless veterans of Chattanooga. No veteran should ever go homeless.
News Talk 92.7's Fast Forecast now. 61 degrees for our evening as we finish up the workday, getting up to 63 today for the high and 61 for the low. Rain expected to continue overnight with high winds, heavy rain pelting us. Tuesday, 65 for the high and 60 for the low. Then Wednesday, 70 for the high, 61 for the low. Rain really not letting up until Thursday with high winds coming in from Irma. That's your Fast Forecast now.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM knows your opinion is important. So call 800-8949. Agree or disagree. Call 423-800-8949. 800-8949. Nooga Radio. 92.7 FM and 95.3 HD4. News, talk, Nooga Radio.
We may have the sports theme song, but this is not the sports show. This is Two Millennials Talk on 92.7 FM here on Nooga Radio.
We might actually end up talking about sports, though.
Yeah. Well, our next story is vaguely related to baseball.
It's more cultural, but yeah, baseball, you know what, if you're in America or the Caribbean or Japan, as you pointed out, then you really can't deny the proclivity, there we go, of baseball. It's a permeating subject that goes through every facet of American culture. Baseball is American in many ways. At least it was born here.
And it was America's pastime before football decided to just become a giant monster and eat all the money.
That's mostly for corporate interests, but you know.
Right. But it was originally baseball, and it's, I think, because of the simplicity of the game. I mean, you know.
Yeah, people like to say as American as apple pie. You know, it's baseball, man. It's baseball.
It's baseball, except now we have a new thing to compare baseball to.
Apparently.
According to a sign that someone rolled out, I believe, in Boston.
4 people at Fenway Park, yeah.
The sign that read that racism is as American as baseball is what the sign read. Now,
I had no idea.
I do agree that there is racism in America.
Who could deny it?
I will not agree that racism is as American as baseball, which originated in America. Baseball, I mean. Right. Racism has been around forever.
Like, you know, if you want to talk about the slave thing, the British were doing it before we were, you know.
Right. The slave trade had begun before there was an America.
Before there were even colonies.
So, you know, if you want to start your origin with Europeans, but I mean, racism goes back even further than that. So
I would say racism is as Roman as the Colosseum.
which you could also argue,
right?
I make a very strong, convincing argument
at
for
that point. You know,
racism could also be as Chinese as the Silk Road. I mean, you would go back a very long way and find that racism has existed for a while.
As Chinese as cheap components. Maybe that is racist, though.
we might. Well, on the line.
Shoot.
Fair ball.
Yeah, so 4 people, although I only see 3 in the photo, rolled out this banner that said racism is as American as baseball. And it looks like they put it together with white duct tape and a black tarp that they bought at Home Depot. ESPN has the story saying it was up for about one batter. That's a while, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, one at bat can last a little bit, but even then, that's.
I mean, 3 strikes, 4 balls, either one. Unless he hits it. But.
Yeah, but that's pretty. I would say that's actually pretty quick when you consider that it was in Boston and Fenway Park is huge.
So we're talking maybe 4 or 5 minutes max.
Yeah, something around there.
Yeah, and I know Fenway Park, they've got pretty good security.
Yeah.
They take their baseball very seriously in Boston, by the way.
In the Northeast in general.
Northeast, yeah, you're right. Northeast in general is like baseball country. The only enclave I can think of is in the South is Atlanta.
Like we talk on my sports show, we talk college football every day of the calendar year.
It's a Southern sport.
That's how they do baseball in the Northeast.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're in New York or you're in Boston and you tune in sports radio up there, they are talking about the Red Sox and the Yankees, and it doesn't really matter what time of year it is. And that's all year. Like it's just that's what they talk about. So definitely.
Yeah, they talk about the highlights from last season, and they talk about the new people who are getting drafted next season, and they talk about the numbers and stuff. I don't understand. I'm still trying to understand it, but I'm a tech millennial. What are you going to do?
I think Boston's an interesting choice though, because there was a player for the Orioles, the Baltimore Orioles, that said that when they were up in Boston, they were playing the Red Sox. There was he heard fans yelling the N-word at him.
That's whoa.
Yeah, which is far and overstepping it. And yes,
it's not even the South. What's going on?
Well, here's the thing. Boston has a racist reputation. So this is not, which again is one of my things with the South, is that like the South gets a racist reputation.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how does everyone not see that this is all over the place?
I would argue you would get one N-word in there in Atlanta before someone beat you up. In Boston, you get a few more.
You could get away with it in Boston probably a little bit more, but in Atlanta, in any of these southern states where or southern cities where the population is predominantly black,
it's like 50%. Yeah,
you are going to get the pounding of your life.
And don't think that there aren't any black baseball fans who are right next to you in the stands.
Yeah, that's not going to go well for you at all.
Not in Atlanta, no.
But. Yeah, it's something that permeates our culture, and it's all over the place. I would say racism is, but that's something that's a human struggle, and we have, as human beings, have to figure out how to be less racist.
Sure,
that's not an American only problem. I want it cleaned up and solved in America because I live here and I like it here. I don't want to go anywhere else. But that idea is just silly.
I'll make a controversial statement that I only make it because I know you'll agree with it, because I think we talked about this before. People are racist against people in the same, ethno group. Think about this. In Africa, other Africans sold Africans as slaves.
And in Scandinavia, the Vikings caught other white people and kept them as chattel slaves in warehouses. I highly recommend, by the way, you read a book called The History of White People. It's a very interesting book. And that's one of the facts in that book that I did not believe. I had never heard of it anywhere else. But yeah, no. Vikings, who were white, captured other white people as slaves. Like it's insane.
It's not funny, but it's kind of funny.
Just
because you never think of that as happening, it's a little bit funny.
Yeah, it's so absurd as a mental image.
It's like something from a video game. Like Privateer, you can capture people in your cargo hold and jettison them into space. It's like hearing the Vikings did the same thing. You're like, what?
Yeah. It's such an odd proposition, but no, it happened.
So Red Sox security forced those holding the sign to not only remove it, they escorted them from their seats. And this statement is funny for a few reasons, because it's just funny to think of Red Sox security as like really rough Boston guys from Southie holding baseball bats coming out. They're like, hey, get out of this. I can't do a Boston. Get out of the seat, man. I don't even gonna try doing a Boston accent. I can't. It's not gonna happen.
I have a vague one, but I have to be like ready to do it.
Yeah. You need some forethought. So a Red Sox spokesperson said this. We should hear it from the Sox mouth itself, the sock puppet's mouth. During the fourth inning of tonight's game, 4 fans unfurled a banner over the left field wall in violation of the club's policy prohibiting signs of any kind to be hung or affixed to the ballpark. Now, the individuals involved were escorted out of Fenway Park. So they're implying that the complaint is not because of the message, it's because you hung something from the wall and you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
So that's a fair, like, PC way of getting out of there.
Which in Boston, the wall is There's a giant wall out in left field. It's called the Green Monster.
I thought they called it the Green Meanie for some reason, but must be a different thing.
Might be.
That's the Beatles. Never mind. My bad.
But the Green Monster, you're not supposed to hang anything from the Green Monster. So that does actually make sense. Like any sign would have gotten you kicked out. But that one specifically, I suppose people are a little bit relieved that you gave them an excuse to get you out of there.
Especially, I don't think that a baseball field is the best place to unfurl a what's the word, inflammatory political message. Just because of it's a baseball field and there are a lot of people who all unify under the one thing, which is they all like baseball. They set politics aside. We all like baseball. And then you're trying to make politics out of it. And you're like, come on, it's the one place.
I'm okay with politics entering sports. My thing is, I would leave it to the people who have the platform that actually can do something. Like you are somebody with a sign. And the most you can say is literally what you put on that sign. I think if a player wants to do something, I don't have any problem with players and coaches and things doing that, because then they have to explain themselves after. Now we get an explanation.
Yeah, I should clarify. I absolutely agree with that. I think that when you're a fan, though, among other fans at a baseball game,
you don't necessarily have the platform to do anything beyond what you've just done. And now you've made the game just a little harder to enjoy for everybody else.
Yeah, and you're taking the attention away from the game and on you. That's just selfish.
And again, what have you fixed? Oh, racism. It's now I hear you. It's as American as baseball. Now what?
Yeah, okay, I've read that. Now can I watch the rest of the game, please?
What am I supposed to do with this information? Oh yeah, I guess some racist was sitting at home watching that and going, "Oh wow." You changed my life there.
Yeah, I wish I could see the sports commentary of that, because baseball commentators are some of the best in the league.
Oh, and the dry humor there with baseball guys is so good.
It's primo. It's choice. I would love to see what they said about that. I need to drag out. I almost said tape. I need to drag out some YouTube video of that and find. That's got to be pretty good.
I can only imagine, because I didn't get to see the game because it's on ESPN. And I'm at this point in the season where it's I pretty much just watch my team and then I watch the Braves.
What is your team again in baseball?
The Nationals.
Nationals? Okay.
Which we're in the same division, so sometimes that ends up being the same game.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Which makes life easier for me. But I do want to say, if we can go from there to another sort of PC story.
Oh, please. It's your show, man. Do what you want.
Which is this notion that it's a story out of Canada.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah. Psychotherapist Jordan B. Peterson, who's also a professor of psychology at the University of Toronto.
Okay.
He posted a video several months back about a law that they were attempting to pass in Canada, where if someone is transgender, you would have to refer to them, whether or not they've had their surgery, you would have to refer to them as the pronoun that they prefer to be called. Otherwise, there could be consequences to that, especially in the case of Dr. Peterson, where he's a professor, that you could actually lose your job over referring to a student who may be physically a male but identifies as a female. If you refer to that person with the pronoun that they don't want you to, you could find yourself in serious trouble. So he posted a video that was essentially just strongly worded as no, thank you, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
Because the slippery slope of the freedoms of speech, you can't control what people say. I mean, that's absolutely insane. But I'm a person that I believe in balance, and I do believe that there is a time and place for political correctness. I think that there's a place for going, okay, I'm not going to say the most offensive possible thing here.
There's a time and place for everything. That's just human decency,
right? But you take political correctness too far, and you have tyranny, and it's sort of playing out. I from what I understand, that law has actually progressed further in Canada, so it's actually closer to becoming a reality there.
Man, what a dystopian place Canada will become.
Yeah.
Well, even more, but
And I mean, I like Canada, but that's crazy, and I don't know what it is the Canadians would have to do to fight that sort of thing. If a Canadian's listening and can tell us.
I know one who would, so I'll ask later.
Yeah,
we'll get some feedback.
But yeah, because that sounds preposterous to me. The idea that the government can tell you what to say and what not to say, and to tell you how to define something as like what actually is offensive. I'm going to now protect the group of transgendered people for them by saying you're offending them when you don't call them the pronoun that they want.
It's absolutely nuts. Although I will say one thing that we can lay claim to as America is the First Amendment.
Yes.
We can lay claim to that, and our absolute undying love for it on both sides of the political spectrum, aside from some crazy, far left-wing people who want to say you can't say things and whatever. But the thing with this is that it is so entirely dangerous, because something to keep in mind as well is not just someone who has decided to transition and has made a hard decision about that, has thought it through, they're going to transition, change their legal name, all that stuff. At that point, I do understand where there might be some trouble for you in your position as an employee, right? Not legally, but in your position as an employee, where you refuse to call that person who has legally, gone through all the legal rigmarole. Because you work for a university, you do have to, go by these guidelines. Makes sense in that case. But you just know, because it's Toronto and it's a university and there's a lot of young kids who browse Tumblr a lot, you just know there's going to be that one person, guy or girl or neither, who's decided tomorrow, I'm going to be a guy, and the next day I'm going to be a girl. And you just know Jordan B. Peterson knows that that's going to happen.
Right.
And that's why he's coming out about this.
That and the idea, which, I mean, gosh, you don't want to have to make analogies to Nazi Germany, but like this idea that if the person's not in the room, it's still it's still against the law, which is to say now you can have people behind your back, like listening out to report on you, which is insane.
That's more like the Soviet Union, I think.
That's true. I might have got my metaphors crossed, but the point is, it's still crazy. That's absurd.
It's absolutely dystopian. You're right. It's like Animal Farm. It's just crazy. Gosh, you have a secret gender police. And it's not like an established state thing. It's a socially recognized, just sort of socially accepted thing where it's like, hey, Professor Peterson, he called Jacqueline a he instead of a she, even though Jacqueline only yesterday decided to be Jacqueline. I'm going to report him to the authorities. Like at that point, it just gets to be absolute insanity. And there's no objective anything to it. There's no objectivity to it. It's completely subjective. Laws have to be objective.
Yeah. And the only way for a law to be objective, I think, is to be a case-by-case kind of law. I mean, there's a reason why you go to court.
Right.
Like you're not immediately up, you've broken this penalty, it's time to just ship you off. It's like, no, you've broken this penalty. What do you have to say for yourself? What were the conditions under which you've broken this law? And all of those things matter. And there's a reason why there's a difference between, a civil case and any other kind of case,
Right.
And it's all of these differences and nuances matter, because you can't just broad stroke brush people as, oh, you're just some kind of law-breaking criminal. You're this person that's just highly offensive. And I don't like the idea of those things being laws, right? Like what I want is, like, if the university has a problem with that the university address that and go, this is our rule. Because like you said, it does get a little bit crazy when, it does involve a university or some place of employment.
Right.
But then the company involved should say that. I don't think the government should be involved in being like, hey, this is what we think is the right thing to do, because governments almost always botch this stuff.
I would have far less of a problem. You're absolutely right. I'd have far less of a problem if this was simply a University of Toronto issue. If it was just the university saying, if we catch our professors doing this, you're going to be terminated. I get that. I don't agree with it, but I get it as like a corporate policy, because it's Canada, very progressive kind of area. University of Toronto, I imagine, is rather progressive. Like in that environment, that does make sense. I can't say that it's right, but I get it. But when you start to involve the state, I'm going to put on my Ron Paul hat here. When you start to involve the state, a lot of issues start to arise. And that's the case with basically everything, because the state, like you say, has a way of botching basically everything.
Yeah. Like, just by the nature of their size, like, it's not even their fault as such. Like,
people do mean well in the state.
Yeah. It's just you're a gigantic, unwieldy force. Like, there's a number of things that you simply cannot do specifically and particularly well. And so I get it. I honestly do. It's just that if we know that that's a weakness that you have, right? Because there are things that states are really good at. For instance, militaries.
Delivering mail.
Yeah.
That's actually constitutional.
They're quite good at those things, but then there are things that the state can't be good at just by the nature of who they are. And anytime you have case by case situations. I don't want the state involved in that stuff.
Yeah, well, it's not structured. Like for American government as an example, and I don't want to get too much into civics, but the American government as an example is not structured to do a lot of the things that it tries to do. It's sort of mutated to do a lot of the things that it tries to do. Just as an example, the government has zero mandate whatsoever, and this is controversial, but the government itself has zero constitutional responsibility to handle healthcare. Just plain example. Now, you may adjust the Constitution to change that, but at the moment, there's no constitutional responsibility.
Right.
Doesn't exist. You could try to make it, but right now, it's a mess because the structure was never planned and is always going to be a Frankenstein's monster because you have policy people, lobbyists, strategists, political analysts, all these focus group people who are trying to make a broad stroke on a subject which is very case by case, like healthcare is.
The strength of the Constitution is also its weakness in that point, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
The strength of the Constitution is that it's open-ended on purpose. The founding fathers figured that, yeah, this isn't going to be this way forever. We don't know exactly what changes are coming in the future, but there are going to be changes in the future, and that maybe 200 years from now and 300 years from now, this is going to look like a different thing. But then that becomes a weakness when the government's like, okay, I guess that's because it didn't say that we can't. I guess that means we should. and then they decide on their own, essentially, to try and fill needs that maybe they're not qualified to fill.
Right.
You know? And that's one of the rougher parts of it, is like separating all that stuff, and you have to be careful with it, obviously, because once governments take powers, they don't give them back frequently.
No, I've never heard of an example where a government freely gave back power that it previously took.
Yeah, like usually there's some kind of revolution that has to happen in order for powers to go back the other direction.
Well, in business, there is sometimes deregulation, so I should take that back slightly. But when it comes to personal rights, not really.
No,
I rarely ever see that, if never.
And so, like, yeah, that's one of those things where it's just like, well, I hope that I hope we do this correctly the first time, because it almost feels like you only get one chance.
You really do only get one shot. It's not like you can go back and be like, oh shoot, I messed that up. Can we change the law again real quick?
Yeah,
kind of mess that up.
And it's crazy because like politicians make short-term decisions because they're just trying to be elected. So they only have one chance to do this correctly, but they're not necessarily incentivized to do it correctly. They're just incentivized to do the thing that gets them elected again.
Yeah. And people don't understand this. People, generally speaking, don't understand. It's like the old phrase, if only you knew how bad things really are. And that really kind of applies to people who are really idealistic about not just society, but also government. It's like, if really you only knew how bad things really are, just be glad they're not even worse than they are.
Yeah. Which that's something to be grateful for, because I mean, you think something can be bad, it can always be worse. It
could always be worse. It could be in we could be in the Soviet Union, I suppose.
Yeah, and then that's not, boy.
Phew, no, thank you. It could be 1939 in Germany. That's no fun.
No, thank you.
That wouldn't even be fun for me. I'm not Semitic, but I look it enough to have been thrown in one of the trains.
It wouldn't have been like, talk about the time travel nightmare. It's like, no. That's not a time travel spot for anybody.
We've made that joke before about how time travel is infinitely better for white people than it is for black people.
Black people cannot go back in time.
We
just can't. There's no point in the past where you would actually want to go.
I think that's a good statement you can make about black people, though, is that black people can only go forward.
Which progress
is good.
I think Obama did promise us that. So
yeah, hope and change.
He didn't necessarily give us a time machine with which to access that such progress, but we were promised progress.
Trump, however, does promise a time machine. I'm still waiting on that time machine, President Trump.
Come on, Donnie.
Bernie Sanders would have given us personal time machine.
Everyone would have gotten a time machine.
You get a time machine,
and the rich people would have paid for it.
Yeah, the rich people will pay for it. Yeah. There's a lot that can be said about that. One of my favorite things to do, because I don't think this is too hot button of an issue because everyone hates communists. One of my favorite things to do is to go on Twitter and find communist arguments for different things, where communists would be like, well, people will just do this or that because the state planned it. And I always say, what's the incentive? It's a simple question. What's the incentive? Under under a communistic government, everything's just given to you. There's no incentive to do anything. There's no incentive to do well at your job. You're going to have people who will, but the average person, it's like, hey, I get, my ration of wheat every day if I do my job or if I don't do my job. Who cares?
Yeah. And the thing is, too, the lack of incentive. I don't know. With communism, we always talk about a lack of incentive. And I think we fail to mention the negative incentive because once you find yourself in a situation where communism is the norm, and communism is supposed to be this paradise where everybody gets what they need and we all just share, what ends up happening ultimately, and it's kind of weird, but what ultimately winds up happening is then everyone has to be happy. So then the government tries to force you to be happy.
Why aren't you happy?
Means, yeah, you can never say that you're miserable, which means now you're not only are you wasting time and wasting money and wasting resources because you get everything you're supposed to get, but the stuff that you don't have, the stuff that's working absolutely inefficiently, you're incentivized to hide so that the government doesn't think that, oh yeah, here's this ungrateful person that wants to be put into our work labor camp.
I've heard stories about people who in the Soviet Union, they had to hide their records, like, 33 RPM records, because they get seized and they'd share them with their neighbors. And it was like a whole big treat. In America, we had records out the wazoo.
Yeah. It's insanity.
It's crazy, man.
You're listening to Two Millennials Talk. I hope you learned something.
Please.
I don't know. 92.7 FM, Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com.
Traffic,